So I came across this story earlier today about a 29-year-old transgender golfer named Hailey Davidson who was trying to compete and earn her status on the Lpga tour, which is the women's tour. She was unsuccessful, but she looks like she will be still playing on the Epson tour, which is like the mini tours, or if I can make an analogy, it's like the minor leagues of golf. So you can still make money and have a career. Obviously, you're not going to make as much as the professional golfers in the Lpga tour and the PGA tour, but you can still be successful. So I saw the story on the Daily Mail. Now it's in reference to Judy Murray, who's the mother of Andy Murray, the famous British tennis player. She was criticizing this and condemning it, saying that it's wrong and not fair for her to compete in the women's competition. So according to the Lpga Tour, back in 2010, they changed it so you don't have to be a female assigned at birth in order to play on the tour. You have to go through several steps. You have to get hormone therapy, gender reassignment surgery, which can take several hours. Hailey has done all those things. So under the pretense and the requirement for the Lpga Tour, Hailey is allowed to play. But I will explain in detail with some historical references and some data as to determine why, even though technically Hailey is able to compete, that they're at a huge advantage compared to other biological sex women's golfers. So I'll explain that briefly in detail. Again, my name is Brian Barsoon. I upload videos daily on YouTube. You can find me on Rumble at @BB_news as well. But just getting into the story here. So the mother of transgender golfer has hit out at criticism from tennis star Andy Murray's mother, Judy, saying her daughter has received death threats since enjoying success last week. I don't know what success she joined. She missed the cut. That's not really successful. I did mention, though, that, she will probably qualify for the Epson Tour, which she's already played on, and she won 3 times already this year. So, there's already, some data to back that up. Hailey's been pretty successful winning already, just in just a short amount of time. So let's see if I can go down a little bit more. So that's just talking about the story. There's Hailey there, a picture of them, excuse me, that narrowly missed out to become the first transgender woman to earn an Lpga Tour card. And this is a quote from Judy Murray. "No, not fair at all. Protect women's sport. Listen to the facts, the scientists, and the medics. This is wrong." So I'm going to take a page out of Dr. Fauci's book and trust the science. I should really be looking at the data on this one. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but also being serious about it. You need to look at the information and find out why this is a huge advantage. Even though they've transitioned, for the first 20 years of their life, they were a male and had all the traits and I don't want to say abilities or the genetics of being a man, that even though they had hormone therapy, they're still at an advantage. So this is a picture of her from her Instagram. Determined to get a hole-in-one on camera one day. Hailey Davidson, 29, wrote on Instagram as she posted. So she's Scottish-born, lives in Florida. Just going over her round, was at Shadow Ridge Golf Club in California. Shot 70 the first round, then 76, and then fell out. Didn't make the cut. So just want to point to something a little bit further down here. Let's see. So after losing, not making the cut, she went onto social media to complain about, first of all, the slow play. So if you're a golfer, sometimes the rounds can be slow. You might have a foursome in front of you that's having too many beers, or they're just playing really slow, taking it a little too seriously, and they're making too many, taking their time on putts. That happens, but I've seen PGA Tour players complain about this too. Notably, I remember VJ Singh back in the day complaining about this. It happens. You just deal with it and you move on. Golf is a very slow sport. It takes 4 to 5 hours to play 18 holes. It's not like basketball. It's not like soccer where it takes, an hour and a half to play a whole game, especially professionally. It takes a while. So that's kind of built into it. So that going in. And then after not making it, then went to complain even more and said, honestly, what kills me the most is knowing that even if I'm lucky enough to advance to stage 2, I can't even afford the entry fee to sign up. So now we're on the guilt trip. So now it's woe is me and, oh, I need money now and please help me out. I'm so poor. Golf is the richest sport. It's the most expensive sport to play in the world. Hailey knew that going in before they even transitioned. I play golf, and if you see the clubs in the background, I like to play every once in a while. I'm a 7 handicap. I mean, it's not nothing special, but I play every once in a while. I think I'm okay. I know it's expensive. I don't play all the time, but I know that going in. It's expensive. You're probably spending $50 to $100 each time you play. Times that by about 10 to 20 rounds a year. You're spending a couple grand every year. Not to mention your clubs that are worth probably $500 to $1,000 altogether. So, it gets expensive. So the whole woe is me argument, I don't buy it. It's just sour grapes to me. But I do want to touch upon something else when it comes to the length of women's driving. So it doesn't really give a height and weight for Hailey, but just taking a look at a picture here, see if I can find it right here. So just taking a look here, I'll just briefly play the clip. So this is Hailey taking a swing. Looks pretty stout to me. I mean, I don't know. She's got to be at least 5'6", 5'7", probably like 160 pounds, 140 pounds. Don't judge me in the comments. I mean, Hailey's got some meat on her bones. I mean, they ain't skinny. So I just want to, for reference, just for an example. So looking here at, this is the average distances of the top Lpga Tour players on tour. So this is the women's professional game. So Bianca Pagdagnan, I hope I said that right, and then Brooke Matthews. So we're all looking at 276 yards average off the tee. So that's pretty good. I mean, if I average 275 off the tee myself, I'd be pretty happy, I have a pretty fast club speed. I can probably swing at like 110 miles an hour, which is above average. I have the extra stiff shaft in my driver and in my irons, so I can generate a lot of club speed. But these are the women's tour players, and these are the top ones. But just want to scroll down a little bit so you can see how it drops off here. So now we're in top 50. Now we're top 75. So top 100. You're still at about 250 yards. So it drops off 25 yards just in the top 100 women on the tour. And then when you get down all the way to the bottom here, at 156, 233 yards on average. So to put that in perspective, there's men just in general that play golf that can easily, even your local weekend golfer can hit the ball 233 yards off the tee for the most part, if they're hitting it straight. These are the top women on the tour, and these are their averages. Now, in comparison to the men's tour. So these numbers have been updated. Obviously, all the live golfers aren't on this anymore, so Bryson DeChambeau is not going to be on here, which would have even skewed it even more. But looking at Cameron Champ, who's right up there with Bryson, 320 yards average. So that's a 50-yard difference we're already looking at right now. When you go all the way down, we're still at 300. Now the top 100 are at 300 yards. So then we keep going down. Now we're at 195th in the world. Brian Stewart, 277. So that's a perspective I want to tell you. So the top women's golfers at 275. The top 200 men at the same. So there's a difference there. And that's with the fast twitch muscles and the reaction times that men have advantage over women. If you see a women's golf swing, it's much slower. Men, it's much more aggressive and, getting through the ball because we generate more club speed and thus more ball speed. So there's the difference right there. So if we go back, take a look again. So, I mean, obviously they've transitioned and they've made all the changes that they want to, but if I had to guess, I don't know, I couldn't pull up any driving distance information from the tour, from the Lpga Tour's Q School event. If I had to guess, though, Hailey's probably driving it at least 250, probably 260. I don't know her height and weight, but if they're hitting it good, they're probably in that range. So by that logic, even if it's 250, and I'm being generous, you're already in the top 100 in the world. So right off the bat, and obviously there's other things that go into that besides driving, but the way the golf is now, it's a long game. It's a driver's game. And I haven't even brought up the fact that there's different tees for men's and women when you're on the golf course. The men's tees are further back because of this reason. And usually on average, it's about 40 to 50 yards difference. If you look at a scorecard, you'll see the differences. Every course is different, and every hole is different based on the layout and the architecture, but it's usually considerably shorter. If I went up to a women's tee and started playing, I would destroy. I'd be shooting even par every time, because and I could probably drive the green on some of them, where you're not supposed to be driving the green on a par 4 unless it's intended for that. But most of the time with the women's tees, I would be right next to the green every time, be chipping on I'd have like 8 birdie putts every round. So now in comparison I want to show you an actual women's golfer that is good and probably one of the best women's golfers that ever played. And that's Babe Dedrickson Zaharias. If you're not familiar with her, she was born June 26, 1911. And she was a multi-sport athlete and did several other sports before even turning to golf. She turned to golf late in her life, comparatively. Obviously, Tiger Woods, we all know he started when he was a little kid. Zaharias didn't start until it was in the 1930s. See if I can find that. So 1935. So she was 24. So for any sport, that's pretty late on. I started when I was 13, and I thought I was late on for starting golf. She started a whole decade after me. But just looking at some of her height and weight here, 5'7", 126 pounds. 5'7" is pretty tall. Usually that would be an average height for a man, but for a woman, especially back then, very tall. So, just wanted to bring her up briefly, and she was one of the few women that actually competed on the men's tour. A lot of people will remember in recent memory of Annika Sorenstam, who competed on the men's tour. I think it was back in 2004, the Memorial, or I'm probably getting the tournament wrong, but it was 15, 20 years ago, where she competed. She didn't make the cut, did not make the cut, but she's probably one of the best golfers of the modern era. Zaharias was that version, but back then, she was a 10-time winner, 10-time major winner on the LPGA tour, and is I think it was Sports Illustrated in 2000, at the end of the century, labeled her as the second most important female athlete of the century, behind Jackie Joyner-Kersee, the heptathlete. So I just wanted to briefly go over the LPGA gender policy and what qualifies a person to be eligible for it. Individuals who have undergone gender reassignment from male to female after puberty are eligible for membership and or participation in tournaments, provided they comply with eligibility requirements set forth below. And let's see here. They must provide a declaration. Applicant must have undergone gender reassignment surgery, a gonadectomy prior to submitting an application for membership or entering the tournament, and applicant must have undergone for at least 1 year appropriate hormonal therapy and maintain testosterone levels in a verifiable manner sufficient to minimize or negate gender-related advantages in sport competitions. So even in their own guidelines, they mention that it can only minimize or negate. So they're already admitting openly that there is an advantage to have high levels of testosterone, not to mention prenatal testosterone as well. I'm not a doctor. I have to say that for YouTube, by the way. I am not a doctor. Consult your doctor, by the way. So, but they're even admitting it, that this is something that, it can be an advantage. And not to mention men have fast twitch fibers and, can jump higher, jump farther, that I mentioned earlier. So minimizing and negating it, there's still an advantage implied by stating that. So if Hailey continues on this path, she's already won on the mini tours 3 times and 5 starts this year. It's probably going to progress to the point where, they're going to keep getting better and eventually might be on the LPGA tour. And I feel that's not fair for women. Why should women be subjugated to this? I feel it's a cop-out, and that they weren't good enough. They were Division II in Wilmington, Delaware in college, and then they transferred to Virginia for a Division III school. Usually when that happens, that means you couldn't cut it, and now you're on to a lower division competing there as well. Obviously, everyone is aware of Leah Thomas, the famous swimmer that everyone has been talking about the past 12 to 24 months. I don't know how long it's been. Feels like an eternity with the pandemic these days. But, that's a high-profile case now. It's bleeding into golf. I never thought it would bleed into golf like this, but here we are. And I think, unless something is done about it, this will persist and it will keep going. So I just think it's interesting. Hailey wasn't the first, though. In 2013, Bobby Lancaster was a 63-year-old physician from Arizona who transitioned as well, but it was very brief. They barely played, and then they ended up just becoming a human rights advocate. So I don't know if that was a publicity stunt or not. I don't know any more information about that, but that is to note. They weren't the first one. Excuse me. And I think this comment here kind of sums it up here. Why have a separate category in golf called ladies if anyone is allowed to self-identify into it? Instantly, it becomes a bogus, lesser men extension of the PGA. How could the LPGA undermine itself in this most ridiculous way? So I agree with that 100%. Why are we having separate tours then? Why don't we just combine both tours into one? We'll just call it the golf tour, the World Golf Tour. And we'll just make it all the same. Men compete with women, make it all the same. And obviously you'll see a lot of men winning. Women will win events if it's a shorter course, like Lydia Ko, or things like that. But most part, if they're all on men's courses, the men will dominate. And that's why they have separate tours. That's why there's a NBA and a WNBA. That's why there's women's soccer, and that's why there's men's soccer. We have separated these based on biological sex. So don't know why it's being combined when there's clear differences that are clear as day. Trust the science, just like Dr. Fauci says. And there's clear data behind it. I didn't even have to pull up like data points and data sets. You can just see it with your eyes. It's the eyeball test. You just look and you can tell. So like I said, does that look like, a woman? I mean, obviously, technically they are, but now Hailey is the woman. They identify as a woman, but they did it so late on in life that they pretty much got all of the benefits of growing up as a boy through puberty and testosterone, and now negating some of that, it's not negating all of it. There's still some of that left. No hormone therapy is going to change that. As of this recording now, there's nothing that can completely negate it, nor would I want there to be. But that sums up my argument here with this. And if there's anything other updates with this, I'll keep you guys posted. But again, like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Comment down below what you think of the situation and what you feel is the best course of action for the LPGA Tour to take on this part. Thank you, and take care.